On the south coast of England, two rivers meet at the head of a long tidal inlet. The tide pushes up the long inlet, filling the channel toward the town above. Here the tide comes up, holds, and then rises a second time before it turns. That made it one of the easiest deep harbours to reach on the Channel coast. Ships could come in and lie afloat while other ports sat waiting for the tide. For 5 centuries, that one advantage decided what Southampton was for. The town those centuries built is mostly gone now, cleared, rebuilt, or burned away. What you see here is rebuilt with AI tools from maps, records, and what still stands. The reconstructions are interpretive and imperfect. They are also the only way to walk these streets. This is the story of Southampton between 1400 and 1912, the wine port of the late Middle Ages, the quay the Mayflower sailed from, and the town that lost more than 500 of its own people in a single night. A Genoese galley comes up the water toward the town quay, oars working. By 1400, Southampton is where southern Europe meets England. Venetian and Genoese ships sail north every year for English wool and cloth. The galley swings in against the quay and lines are thrown ashore. They come back loaded with wine, spices, alum and glass. In 1378, an act lets Italian and Spanish merchants ship goods straight home, instead of sending everything first to the staple at Calais. It is a small change in the law, and it makes the town rich. Barrels of Gascon wine roll off a ship and along the length of the quay. Around 250 pipes of wine a year go inland to Salisbury alone. A loaded cart pulls away from the water and climbs the street into the town. The wool house is built at the end of the 14th century. Wool waits inside it for the galleys, sometimes for months at a time. Porters cross the quay with bales on their shoulders, heading for the waiting hulls. By the mid-15th century, Italian ships carry as much as a fifth of English wool. Merchants in furred gowns walk down from the town gate toward the moored galleys. Unloaded cargo moves up the quay toward the storehouses in a steady line. Italian merchants keep houses in the town and marry into local families. Historians call this the town's golden age. It holds for most of the 15th century. In the summer of 1415, the quay fills with something else entirely. Henry V is assembling an army here to invade France. Men, horses, barrels, and bundles of arrows move down through the town toward the water in one slow column that does not stop for several days. A fleet gathers in the water below the town, more ships than anyone can count. Small boats cross back and forth between the shore and the anchored ships. Carts of arrows, salted meat, and barreled ale roll down to the water's edge. Then, days before sailing, the whole enterprise is nearly undone. Horses are led one by one down the ramp into the waiting transports. 3 men close to the king intend to depose him. They mean to put Edmund Mortimer, Earl of March, on the throne instead. Mortimer goes to the king and tells him everything. The conspirators are tried in Southampton and executed outside the town walls. The fleet stands out from the harbour under sail, ship after ship, into the Solent. On the 25th of October, that army fights at Agincourt. The battle is remembered everywhere. The quay it left from is not. 2 centuries later, the same water handles a much smaller departure. In the summer of 1620, 2 ships lie at Southampton taking on stores. Crates, casks, and bundles of bedding are carried up the gangway one after another. The Mayflower has come round from London, the Speedwell has come from Holland. Between them they carry a congregation intending to settle in America. They argue for weeks over money before anyone sails. The 2 ships pull away from the quay together in the first week of August, sails filling slowly, as the town stands along the shore and watches them until they are out of sight. A ship's boat rows out from the quay toward the Mayflower, riding at anchor beyond. The Speedwell starts taking water almost at once. They put in at Dartmouth, they try again, she leaks again. In the end, the Speedwell is abandoned altogether and left behind at Plymouth, and the Mayflower crosses alone, overloaded in September. The Mayflower works down the water past the town, growing smaller. Southampton is where that voyage was provisioned and where it began. Plymouth is the name that stayed on the voyage and still has it. If you like history rebuilt from what survives rather than what was invented about it, consider becoming a channel member. It funds the patient work this kind of reconstruction takes. The Italian trade thins from the 1470s, and by the 1530s the galleys have stopped coming. The Venetians shift their business to London. The Genoese lose the alum trade to Florence. London takes the cloth. Bristol takes the Atlantic. An empty quay, and one small coaster working slowly out on the tide. Southampton spends 200 years as a quiet county town. Then, in 1740, it finds a second life as a spa. Mineral springs are found, and the fashionable arrive to drink the water. Carriages roll along the shore road past the bathing houses and the new assembly rooms. Assembly rooms open. There are season subscriptions and a great deal of walking. Visitors walk
A
the shore
lovely
promenade in
evening
the
for a
evening,
stroll.
the tide out
Indeed.
behind them.
The sun's
For a few decades, the town lives on visitors instead of cargo. It is pleasant, and it is not what the harbour was made for. The change, when it comes from a company rather than a king. An Act of Parliament creates the Southampton Dock Company in 1836. In October 1838, the foundation stone of the first dock is laid. Workmen haul dressed stone along the line of the new dock wall, rope over shoulder. A steam crane swings a block out over the excavation and lowers it in. The first ships enter the new dock in 1842. It is formally opened the year after. The railway reaches the town in the same decade. The goods train runs in along the quayside straight to the ships. For the first time, a ship can unload here and be in London the same day. A paddle steamer works out of the new dock toward the open water, smoke trailing. The old advantage, the double tide and the sheltered water, suddenly matters again. Passengers cross the platform from the train toward the waiting steamer. Within 50 years, Southampton is a mail and passenger port of the first rank. In 1907, one commercial decision fixes everything that follows. The White Star Line moves its express New York service from Liverpool to Southampton. Oceanic, Teutonic, Majestic and Adriatic all transfer south. The first of them sails in June, under a captain named Edward Smith. A liner comes alongside, dwarfing the sheds and cranes on the quay. Tugs push the liner off the quay and swing her slowly round toward the sea. The reason is the tide and the railway, not sentiment. Ships can sail on any tide and boat trains run straight through to Waterloo. The boat train pulls in beside the ship and passengers step down onto the quay. Trunks, mail sacks and crated freight move along the quay toward the ship's side. The consequence is that the crews are now hired here. Men file past the hiring window at the dock gate, signing on for the crossing. Firemen, trimmers, stewards and cooks, thousands of them, living within a mile of the water. On the 10th of April 1912, the Titanic leaves Southampton on her first voyage. She moves out from the quay in the early afternoon, so large that the water she drags behind her snaps every mooring rope on a liner tied up alongside. Of her crew, 724 gave an address in Southampton. 175 of them came home. The news reaches the town on the 16th. A crowd gathers outside the White Star offices, pressing toward the posted lists. The names of the saved go up on blackboards outside, a few at a time. In one school in Northam, about half the children have lost their fathers. Blinds stay down along whole streets in Northam and Chapel. The town does not lose passengers. It loses stokers, stewards and greasers, men who were hired because a shipping line had moved south 5 years earlier. For 5 centuries this water did the same job. Whatever else changed, its work was to send things away. Wool to Venice, an army to France, a congregation to America, emigrants to New York. The town was good at it because of the shape of its harbour and lived on that. In 1912, the arrangement turned round, and the loss came home instead. The tide runs out past the empty quay in April 1912, the way it always has. The Wool House still stands on the western shore 5 centuries after it was built. The berth the Titanic sailed from lies quiet again, waiting for the next ship. By evening the tide will be up and the port will go on sending men away.